Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Still Loading podcast. Today I am absolutely delighted and overjoyed to be joined today by Mary Agbesanwa, who is an amazing person in the fintech space, and if you don't know her you should get to know her, so please reach out to her after this. But Mary works at the moment with Seckle as their fintech growth lead. She also is the founder of Now You're Talking Network, which is all helping millennial professionals to accelerate their development and build their confidence. So absolutely amazing. We're going to be diving deep into that on this episode. She's also a former consultant at PwC, which is where our paths crossed. Although we didn't work together, you kind of know each other in the distance of the foyer and sort of wave. And then she's also a passionate blogger on Medium, all about the Millennial Diary, which is all about career and personal development as well. So what was fascinating when I was doing a bit of research for Mary, it sounds a bit stalkery, but it's not, was that her three passions are very much aligned to mine, which is all about personal development, fintech, and community building. So welcome to the podcast, Mary. Please, can you share a little bit about yourself for the audience?
Thank you so much, Ilona. So great to be on the podcast, and your intro was fabulous. Very comprehensive, but as you said, those are my interest areas, things that I'm passionate about, really thinking about how technology is transforming and democratizing access to the financial services industry, and also supporting millennials, to particularly female millennials and Gen Z, to achieve their full potential and the amazing products, services, businesses, side hustles that can be birthed when that happens as well. And yeah, I work in fintech sales as kind of my day job, and then also do loads of things around community building, writing, part-time lecturing at Imperial Business School as well, and a trustee for Girl Guiding, the charity. So really passionate about all things women and women empowerment as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, who knows where you find the time? You must have one of those time turner things like Hermione Granger had in the Harry Potter films. But it's quite an amazing set of experiences you have and things that you're continuing to be passionate about. And I really am interested around the Now You're Talking network and this side hustle thing. So one of the things I think that has increased over the past 10, 15 years is people willingly and really encouraged, in a sense, to go after their side hustle. Yes, we have to have a day job to build the side hustle into something. And you've done that, right? You have something alongside with what you do as your day job, as you say. How has that been for you?
So I think it's been good. It's been really interesting. I guess the reason why I became really passionate about side hustles was because building the Now You're Talking network community, which, as you said, is all about helping women earn more and be more confident, literally started off as a WhatsApp group of 30 of my friends that I knew worked in the city in tech or professional services. And now, like, I guess 5 or 6 years later, we have a mailing list of over 1,000 women, and we host regular monthly events and put on also workshops for our members and also for corporates and startups around career and personal development. And when we did one of our early membership surveys, when we had about maybe 300 women, we saw that 60% of them had side hustles or were thinking about launching side hustles, which was super interesting to me. And as we dug deeper into those numbers and started speaking to the ladies in the community, it was very clear that not only were people interested because side hustles could be a great way to earn additional income, but more importantly, for working women that had great jobs already, it was an avenue for them to have a sense of ownership, to launch something into the world that didn't exist before they kind of ideated it, and also to have that sense of ownership, to gain confidence from building something to selling things, and to build their creative skills. And I think that more employers, if they embraced the power of side hustles, could see more women rise up into leadership positions, and happier staff generally as well. And there's some amazing stats about how the side hustle economy has grown post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, it was 1 in 4 UK adults. Post-pandemic, it's 1 in 3. And now by 2030, it's expected that there'll be more side hustlers than like full-time employees, which is crazy. So I think it's a really clear market and demographic that is still kind of like silent because there's still a stigma-ish about it. And I think it's really fun to talk more about the overlap of the side hustle economy, how people's careers are changing, and also the angle of empowering more women financially and enabling them to tap into their entrepreneurial spirit as well.
Yeah, I think you've got some really interesting insights there. And I mean, I read the report. You know, if anyone wants to read it, it's actually on Mary's website, all about the Now You're Talking Network report. And it said, and this was on a pie chart, so I love pie charts because they're very visual, but it was just a little bit more than half said no, their manager does not know they have a side hustle. And I was like, oh, and I kind of thought about it and I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But I feel like if we've got 1 in 3 people now having a side hustle, but more than half are not telling their bosses, their bosses are kind of missing out on valuable intel about their staff, that their staff skills or interests or passions. You know, you're more than just one task, if you know what I mean.
Completely agree. You are more than just your day job. And I think a fear that people have is that it will be perceived that they're distracted from their day job. And obviously, if your side hustle is direct competition to your day job, then it's probably not going to be, you're not going to be managing both for very long. You'll probably have a view to becoming full-time in your side hustle. But for a lot of people, they might be a lawyer and also make candles on the side, or like might be working in consulting and also have an interest in dance. So it can be very different things, but obviously the transferable skills can be so impactful as well.
How would you say someone should represent their side hustle then? Because you're also a career, you know, you're a career expert and you talk about that with your network and in a wider audience. How would someone represent their side hustle on their CV or LinkedIn then?
I think, unfortunately, we still live in a time where some employers have a stigma against it. I think have a look at your company's policy, and assuming there aren't any exclusions about work you can do outside of work or any conflicts of interest per se, then I would say I would embrace it. I think a 21st century forward-thinking next generation employer will be thinking about those things. It's very common, as we can see from the stats. So actually, you will feel better as an employee if you are working somewhere where you can bring that whole self to work. And maybe if you do bake cakes on the side, you can bring cakes in for the team and they will see your skills that you have outside of work. And it's not just things like that, but I think sometimes when we hide things from our employers, whatever it may be, it impacts us in a way that we might not realize in our day job. So when you do find companies that are embracing of those things, I think it does really stand out for people these days.
Yeah, and I think that could be a really interesting point to make to companies, like actually showcase that with your employees and actually be a welcoming employer. I think that might be a differentiator, you know, for hiring, because the war on talent is real. So you want to be showcasing like you've got a diverse group of people who are holistically well-rounded, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And people that are willing to do things in their free time to build new skills are the exact kind of people that companies usually want in their organization. People that are willing to develop new skills, to try things, to fail, because you have to be willing to fail as an entrepreneur or side hustler. So that kind of zeal, proactivity and energy is exactly what you want in your company. And I fear that some companies might be missing out on that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Please take note, employees and employers. That's a great point to make. I wanted to also stop a little and rest on the point around side hustles because of earning an extra income, right? And one of the things that I was reflecting on about that point was the fact that things are not, because of the cost of inflation. Me and my friends were doing some mathematics over the past few weeks about the rate of inflation. And I think the rate of like buying a house is 20 times now a salary, the average price of a house, whereas in the 80s and 90s when we sort of came into being, it was about 4 times your salary. So part of my concern as well is side hustles are a kind of response to people wanting to still have a certain lifestyle or to be able to afford certain things. And they have to actually find a way to get a side hustle going so that they have that extra income. And I know you talk a lot in the fintech community about financial inclusion. I just wondered kind of what's your perspective on all that?
Yeah, I definitely can see how joining those dots makes a lot of sense. Side hustles can be a much needed source of income for people. I think the pandemic made a lot of people realize that you can't just rely on one stream of income from your employer, getting paid 12 days in a year, conditional on kind of the business conditions and also the wider macroeconomic environment. So actually, how can you make sure that you're being paid through other revenue streams, through other skills that you have, not to a state where you burn yourself out, but you start to think about the portability of your skills and what you're good at, and whether it's and what I'm excited about when we think about the how technology is helping this as well. Like, you don't need to have so much money to launch a side hustle or start a business these days. Whether it's selling things on eBay or Vinted or Depop, or starting a content creation outlet like a podcast or YouTube channel. I love that tech has really brought down the barriers to entry to a lot of these things. So really the only thing left is addressing the confidence gap that a lot of people might have to go out there and start something.
Yeah, and that's what your network does. And it grew from your 30 mates on a WhatsApp to now, 1,000 people on your mailing list. But that wasn't, I struggle to believe that was just a cakewalk. So I'd love to know a little bit about your side hustle journey. What were the challenges, I guess? Because no one ever talks about how hard it is. Like the podcast, for example, I've been doing for a year and a bit. And sometimes it's tough to manage it all. But I'm so passionate about it. I've got the energy for it. But, people often skirt the hard bit. And I think the hard bit is almost the leadership bit. That's where you learn a lot.
Exactly. I think the good bit is, as you mentioned, when you're passionate about it and you for a long time with your side hustle, especially if it's more in the content creation, the community building space, you probably won't be making any money. So are you passionate about actually bringing community together, about producing the content, the stuff that's less glamorous when no one's watching or the listenership or the readership might be low? And that's what's kind of driven me over time, is that I know I would do this in my free time. So I'm passionate enough to do it when things are pretty at their nascent stages. And I think in terms of challenges, I think challenges around building a community are listening to what the community wants. And sometimes people don't really know what they want. They're like, I want a job and I want to work from home and I want to do this and I want to have a side hustle. And it's just like, okay, so what does our community actually need? And iterating with different ideas. So we found it really useful to do like membership surveys quite often. We're now doing monthly in-person events at a co-working space in Aldgate, which is fun as well. And I think that's I think a lot of it is like trial and error, but also like looking at the data and what people are responding to. So definitely in the true like startup kind of scrappy sense, try a whole load of things, but also see what people are responding to, what they engage with, which Instagram posts do really well, which events do really well, and focus on that going forward. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot that you can do. I love that kind of scrappy testing methodology. It's the only way that kind of it works. And often I've found that you'll do something and you're like, how is that so successful and popular? Like it didn't dawn on you. And I was reading a brilliant post on LinkedIn yesterday. It was about sales, right? And about like almost meeting your ideal customer. And they were like, your network is probably people that you like and and you've worked with. They might not be your ideal customer. And I was like, that's so simple but obvious. And so he was like, you need to then get into the mindset of your ideal customer. So if your side hustle is candles, but all your like network is like super duper corporate fintech something, that they might be candle aficionados too, but where is the majority of your candle loving cohort going to be? It might not be, you know, in the fintech spaces, although I could see a nice overlap there.
Me too, but I completely agree, and that's why I think like networking is so important, and just like making sure you're building that network not only in the space that you're in now, but just meeting people, like-minded people in other industries as well, is something I've loved doing through the community as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think what's been amazing with the podcast is just meeting people in ways I just wouldn't have met them otherwise, which is fantastic. I'd like to turn it now to you specifically, Mary, and I'd love to know a little bit more about a leader that influenced you on your own leadership development journey.
Oh, I was thinking about this question. I think I'm going to pick a leader that I haven't worked directly with, but a leader that, when I think of, for me, like female leaders that inspires me, Michelle Obama has to be up there. I'm sure someone might have said that on your podcast. Well, yeah, she's amazing. And I just feel like she's a leader not only in her presence, the way she acts, the way she's willing to speak out boldly on certain issues, her career, but also how frank and open and honest she's been. She spoke in London, I don't want to remember what year it was, a couple of years ago, and seeing her in person was amazing, and just her honesty about her journey of developing her self-confidence, being kind of thrust into the limelight with Barack Obama's political career as well, and just how she built her confidence quickly and how she learned from her mistakes. And I think she's just really, really inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. She often comes up in like my sort of role model booklet. And one of the reasons I think is what you described at the beginning there about she really embodies like the behaviours. Do you know what I mean? She actually does what she says she's going to do. So if she's telling you need to exercise, you're seeing pictures of her exercising on the front lawn of the White House, and she's like, you know, got her guns out. And it's like what I really find difficult at the moment with a lot of leaders in the public eye is they'll say one thing, but they're doing another, right? So I'll use a very obvious example, like with Boris Johnson and our now new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. And they said, stay at home, don't do anything, you know, keep social distancing. But yet we're breaking the rules themselves. And that is really frustrating for me when leaders especially are doing things and they're saying things and they're not matching.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's how you lose trust in a leader as well. You just can't really respect them when they're preaching one thing and then doing something else.
Yeah, and I think that's even more valuable in a team dynamic, right? So it doesn't, I mean, Michelle Obama's an amazing example, but even within a team, I think for leaders, if you've got a small team and you're saying to your team, say, for example, come into the office, but you're working from home, well, that doesn't work. Why would someone do what you're telling them to do, but you're not doing it yourself?
Yeah.
It always baffles me. I'd love to know a little bit more about something that helped you on your leadership development journey. Like, what's a sort of situation or maybe, something that you did that you were really proud of and it really helps you develop yourself?
Wow. I would say at a high level, networking has really helped my leadership journey. I think that a lot of millennials, particularly that I speak to and interact with, think that when they're a leader, that they're automatically going to get promoted and just the doors will open to their network just 10xing very quickly. And it will just be this amazing moment where all of this network emerges and just has trust in them and will do business with them immediately. And actually, that phrase, your network is your net worth, however cheesy that is, it's just so true. I think we both know that from our time in professional services, and even in startup, I see it now, like a lot of the same people in similar circles, whether it's looking for jobs or just looking to learn and share with others in similar roles, or trying to understand more about a potential client. Tapping into your network is so powerful. And I think that something that's helped me on my leadership journey is just focusing on networking, trying to always attend networking events when I can, host events, putting myself out there. And people respect that. And it's just a great way to connect with people. And I've made some of my closest friends from networking events. That might sound sad to say, but no, really great people that we've like-minded interests. And I think young people in particular could do that a lot more.
Well, it's great now that we can actually network back in person. I think that's going to be a real benefit to people who are starting out in their career, especially because I know that Gen Z in particular, with all the pandemic stuff and all this remote working, you know, I remember getting into an argument with my boss at the time about this, and he was obviously comfortable working from home. He has a big house, he's at the end of his career, like he's got his private office, and it's like, yes, I know, but if you're a young professional living, for example, in London, where we both are from, you are going to be living in a house share generally, and so you're living and working from a room. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And as you know, in the early stages of your career, you're learning a lot through osmosis, just watching people in the office. It's not necessarily formal, sit down, here's a textbook. It's just, how do things happen? How do you get things done? And I think, unfortunately, remote working doesn't necessarily lend itself well to that kind of way of picking up information and, as you say, building your network organically from being around people.
Agree. Some of that learning that you do by kind of almost just like copying someone around you and just understanding how they navigate an environment or how they spend their time, what is alongside them being present in a meeting, how are they taking their notes, how are they following up, how are they managing their time, how are they planning for the next day, and even now as I'm building out my team, like those are the things that I'm thinking about, like how do I make sure I still have that time to recreate when we're not in the same environment, some of those lessons that would happen when we are in the same environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so with your current role, do you have a mix? You're hybrid, you're sometimes in the office and sometimes working anywhere?
Yes.
And what's been your sort of top tips, I guess, for when you're managing your team remotely and or in a hybrid way? What have you found works really well?
I think I'm a big fan of communication. I don't think anyone wants to be...
Your website would definitely allude to that, for sure.
Yeah, just bombard people with communication. But I don't think anyone wants to be micromanaged, but I do think people enjoy being kept in the loop and feeling like there's someone there that they can just ask those quick questions that are not necessarily even stupid, but that are just the questions that you would ask that would be so casual as if you were sitting next to the person, and trying to recreate that kind of vibe with your colleagues is really important. I definitely think that the onboarding process for new people really matters. So I do have a bias for, in those first couple of weeks, spending that in-person time if you can, even if it requires flights or trains or whatever is required. I do think like that beginning period, someone needs to get their knowledge up to scratch, and that can be the basis from which someone feels really comfortable in your team or even in the wider organization as well. And I think, just with communication, you also setting the environment for kind of honesty and clarity with all the conversation, and that you're not expecting the right answers all the time, but you just want to have an environment where you can raise things, challenge each other, and that's kind of environments that I enjoy as well. Yeah,
no, that's really, really great advice. And I definitely think there's going to be some evidence in the future where they prove that you almost can pick up information in, like not telepathy, not as far as that, but there's just a lot more that's being said when you're in real life with someone, and you're just picking up so much nuance that then you can take away that you lose out on. I'm not entirely sure how they'll measure it, but it was incredible when it was the pandemic and I finally got to be with my team after not being together for 9 months. and we did a strategy day. And obviously strategy is about planning what we're going to do in the future and how we're going to get there. And it just got done in a day. And we had been struggling for weeks to do it remotely. And I was like, why was that much easier in real life and not? And I just think there's some things you can do remotely very well, and there's some things that are just better in real life. And I think once we get a better understanding of what those tasks are, then I think we'll be able to manage and plan the structure of our work better, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's deciding. I find, like, especially that collaborative, creative work in person is really helpful if you can. And then, like, I love my working from home deep work time when I know, okay, I need to write this blog post, or I need to just power through my emails and get close to inbox zero as much as possible.
Good luck.
Based on the activities, deciding the location can be really powerful as well.
Yeah, and I'd love to just revisit the point you said about networking. If someone is maybe a little scared or nervous about networking, or they feel a bit awkward about it, what would be your best advice for someone who wants to kind of step into the foray and enjoy networking? What would be your advice?
Okay, some quick fire tips. I think maybe start off with virtual events. Virtual events, I think, are way less intimidating. So just find some virtual events that you like the sound of, attend those, practice just like introducing yourself, sharing maybe your LinkedIn profile in the Zoom chat if it's on Zoom. And then you start to feel a bit more comfortable, maybe ask a question, connect with someone from the event. And then when it comes to in person, I think similarly, like, you want to find events that you're truly interested in and passionate about this topic. Going with someone else can be helpful as well, so that you have someone that you can chat to whilst you're at the event. But if not, go straight to the drinks or food, and I'm sure you'll find someone there, and just start a conversation. And you don't even need to think of too lofty questions. It can just be like asking someone how they got to the event, why they decided to come to the event, to share a bit about themselves and what they enjoy, and what their plans are, to learn at the event as well. And most people are, if they are nervous, just as nervous as you are. So kind of just remembering that everyone's in the same space. They're here to like do this awkward thing of networking, which is really just having normal conversations, but usually in a like business context. And I would say, I think of networking as a process of just building authentic relationships. I personally believe that depth is better than breadth. Like, obviously, over time, you want to have a breadth to your network, not only your company, but your industry, and like-minded individuals, but also just not going to a networking event and trying to connect with everyone, because that will just burn you out and you won't actually feel like you've built good relationships off the back of it. It's better to go to an event, connect with one person, really feel like you had a good connection, follow up, go for coffee a month later, and that will be a more sustainable relationship to have developed, rather than just connecting with everyone sporadically.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who has attended networking events throughout the years, you do know that person who's just there to collect, almost like a little bit of a Pokemon collect sort of thing, just collecting all the LinkedIn profiles, and you're like, ew, don't do that. So definitely just a tip from me, just don't go there to collect but equally, there is a cool feature of the LinkedIn app where you can actually just scan someone's little QR code, so that makes it seem quite fun.
I love that. It saves so much time. I did it just yesterday evening.
Do you think business cards are going to make a comeback, like paper business cards?
I have to admit, I do have paper business cards. I think they can be good. Like, I try and reuse them where I can. So, like, if I only have a couple on me, I get people to just take a picture of the business card. But my business card has a QR code to like my calendar on it, just to make it super easy.
Very clever.
And then another half of them have a QR code to my LinkedIn. So that just makes it super easy to connect with me through that as well. But I can understand how people would say they're not the best for the environment. So I love all these new digital tools that make it easier for you to just connect with people more instantaneously. But the good thing about business cards is like it gives you that level of association of like, I met Ilona at this event and this is the company she works for. And usually I try and write down like any key things that I spoke to the person about on the back of their business card as well. So that when I look at it at another point, I remember, okay, we met at this event, she works here, and these are the things we spoke about.
Ooh, that's an amazing tip. I feel like that's a proper gold nugget. Thank you for sharing. Within your fintech world, well, our fintech world, we both inhabit the fintech space. You more so than me. I totally contest to that. But with the fintech space, what are the trends in leadership that you're seeing within the fintech space? Because at the moment, what I'm hearing, at least from the blog posts and stuff I read, is just kind of a bit of a concern about funding, right? So there's this issue around funding, and so they're not sure how much there's going to be because of different things that have happened with the economy. So when I think about that, I think about the fact that you need good leaders in fintechs, and so you're going to need to up the game of the leaders that you have in each of the fintechs. But I'm not seeing necessarily a huge investment in that space because people are nervous. So it'd be amazing to hear your sort of reflections on the fintech space, and also within the companies you work with and for, and what's happening there.
Wow. Some trends that I've seen in leadership that I think are interesting. I definitely think post-pandemic, people expect leaders, it sounds really basic, but leaders to be way more empathetic. Kind of those ages of leaders sending out emails to the whole company that are just cold, insensitive, don't have an element of a care value and recognizing your employees are more than just robots working for you. It's really basic, but honestly, I think a lot of people do respect that. And I think that empathy should be in the obvious leaders like the C-suite, but also in the micro leaders like team leaders and heads of departments as well. I think that's really, really important. What else would I say? I think trust, an element of trust. I think we've spoken a bit about the hybrid versus remote working. People want to feel like they can trust their leaders are going to make the right decisions for them, that they will represent them and their needs and unblock any challenges that they have as well. So I think trust is probably an ever-present value that people want to see in their leaders, and it's quite a common thing I hear discussed at the moment as well. And then lastly, I think visibility. People want to see leaders that are visible, in the sense that a lot of millennials that I speak to are looking for to be inspired by other millennial leaders in whatever capacity, maybe in their industry, but also leaders that might look like them from a gender or ethnicity perspective. I think it's quite a common conversation as well. And also just like visible in the sense of being profiled by the company. I know a whole load of people that when they're applying for jobs, if they're looking at a company and all the leaders that they've profiled or on the company landing page all look the same, they're just going to freak out. And the company could have the best valuation ever, but they just see that as a signal for what the culture might be like and what their success might look like in that company. So I think that's another key consideration as well.
Well, you make a really interesting point about culture, because, you know, you can put the images on there, right, on the company website, but it's really how can you walk the walk and talk the talk, because it's much more than just representation in a visual capacity from branding.
Yeah.
It's got to be a meaningful, this is how we approach these things. And like that's kind of where I think there is a shortfall, if I'm honest. Like I see that quite commonly, like in terms of real, genuine, making a difference change, and actually thinking about how to be inclusive, right? So how to actually bring diversity and inclusion into how you're building a business. It's often an afterthought, and it's a key component of growth, I think, of what you can do as a company.
Yeah.
And with the trust element, we were talking earlier about, you know, Michelle Obama versus Boris Johnson. I roll my eyes for those of you who can't see the video, but I am rolling so hard they might snap back in my head. But the point being is, it's that kind of, you've got to do what you say. So like what you're saying with having the right people on your website representing your employees, you've also got to back it up by doing with what you're going to say, not just doing it for like visuals or ticking a box. And that element of trust, it takes a long time to build and a very short time to break.
Yes.
And it just, it's going to be very interesting for fintechs. We're nearly at the end of our podcast, but I'd love to know a little bit more about the work that you're going to be doing with, Now You're Talking Network, because it's October when we're actually recording this. And I know you've been doing a lot of work for Black History Month. And so I'd love to know where people can find out more information and they can get in touch with you, and also learn more about Now You're Talking Network and maybe join.
Yes, thank you so much, Ilona. So yes, please do check out the Now You're Talking Network. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter as well. We have a mailing list where we send out job opportunities, resources, give an update on what some of our members are up to, share some useful articles and podcasts you can listen to like this one, and everything if you love kind of personal development and career chats. And you can find us at NYT Network on Instagram and Twitter, and our website, www.nytnetworks.com. And we're always available to host events or workshops at companies. And we love talking about topics that we've discussed today, like side hustles, entrepreneurship, but also things like organization, productivity, personal branding in a digital age. That's a whole nother conversation. Salary negotiation, confidence, imposter syndrome, all of those kind of stigmatized topics in relation to careers and personal development is what we love to not avoid and talk about. So if that's of interest to anyone, they should definitely reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do so. And also, if you are interested in personal branding, we had a great podcast episode with Joanna Jago, who spoke about that, about personal branding on your LinkedIn. So, and it was honestly like dropping nuggets of gold everywhere. I was like, this is awesome. So please do listen to that. The final thing then is your 3 top tips then for your 3 top tips for leaders of the digital age.
My 3 top tips. I think the first one is, I hope these aren't too basic, but firstly, to just read and stay informed. I know I feel like it's really easy to get distracted these days, whether it's cost of living crisis or the political craziness going on. We can spend so much time being fixated on the noise happening around us. So how are you dedicating time to stay informed about your industry, how it's evolving? For me, like the hot fintechs in my space, the trends, where the industry is going, spending time to read report papers, and actually digest news that is really impacting you and your industry. I think that's important. Secondly, I thought I'd go back to the point we mentioned earlier around networking, an obvious one as well, but I hope that will, and I don't think it will ever get old, but just dedicating time to networking, saying, okay, I'm going to go to a networking event this evening, or I'm going to go to that conference, or I'm going to ask work to sponsor me to go to that event or conference. Really, really important. And then thirdly, one particularly for I guess the millennial women out there, is the confidence piece, as inspired by Michelle Obama that we spoke about earlier. But I think kind of working on your confidence always pays dividends. I see and meet so many amazing women that are just kind of lacking in the confidence, and you can see it in the way they act and the way they might present themselves and the way they might sell themselves short for jobs that they apply for. And it can just hinder you in all arenas of your life. So taking the time out to work on your confidence is so paramount, and I would encourage listeners to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And networking for sure. I think you're absolutely spot on to kind of highlight that. It's quite remarkable that we've come to this many episodes of the Still Loading podcast, and it's probably the first time it's been mentioned, but I really agree with you. I think it's an essential thing to just practice getting to know people, building your network. And you can also use it to build your confidence, right? You can do the two in tandem.
Exactly. Hit two birds with one stone. Yeah.
That's it. That's the side hustler way, right? Always two birds, one stone.
Always efficient.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Mary, for joining us today. And I'm going to be putting all the links in the description box below to your website, to the Now You're Talking Network website, and also people can reach out and connect with you on LinkedIn. That'll be there too. But for now, thank you again. Really lovely to speak with you, and have a great rest of your day.